In my line of work, it's a sort of curious backwater scoring for films, because I just want to give you a sort of a tiny bit of a background. Unlike other disciplines in the arts, my field is one where, you say, right, you're going to write music for a film. But it's a medium that is so proprietary, it almost works against the creative process. Unlike painting, for instance, or even writing music, where you're not writing for film, you're writing songs. But almost any other art form, you create or can create a whole series of paintings, using that analogy for a moment, where it is each painting might be a small progression, but it's all part of your consciousness, it's part of how you look at the world, and it is a there's no feeling of proprietary when you, for instance, get a commission to make a painting, paint a painting for somebody, a Monet, for instance. You go to an art gallery, and there are many Monets on display. Some of them have been commissioned, some of them are from private collections. Unlike that world, the film world is very proprietary. When I do a film score, I am basically nothing more than a fancy pencil for hire. I don't own any of the music when I'm done. It belongs to the film company. And likewise, when I'm done, even if I come up with something astounding that I may want to revisit as though I was a painter, and I say, oh God, I'm going to do another one right away. In the world of film composition, you can't do that because you don't own the creation. And therefore, each time out has to be a completely clean canvas, as it were. And if I come up with an interesting idea on film A and want to explore that, it's very hard to do that and bring it into film B without somebody saying, hey, that belongs to us, you can't do that. So my world is very, very closed down creatively compared to other disciplines, dance, painting, almost anything else I can think of, writing. It's just amazing. And with music, at least from my perspective, everybody feels that they recognize music, recognize themes, so everybody feels they always recognize somebody's style, or doesn't that thing sound like something else? And that's always part of the film world. And also, in my writing for film, you work for clients, because after all, I'm writing something, and it may be stunning to me, and it may be an absolutely wonderful reaction to the film I'm watching, but you're working for somebody and you're hired by somebody who may not share the same tastes, and frequently doesn't. And sometimes you get into situations where you think you've created, as I said, something lovely, and the person you're working for says, yeah, but can you make it a little cuter, or can you make it a little happier, or can you make it a little... And you always have to sort of keep in mind that no matter what you do, you really are working for somebody else and somebody else's tastes. And the whole art of film composition, for me, has become one of gentle manipulation, not only of an audience, but because that's my job, but also gentle manipulation of the employer, the director in my case, to accept ideas that he's never heard before and accept them as his own against an image that he's lived with for quite a long time. And if he's a writer as well as a director, it's something that he's dreamed up from day one. He's written a script, he's gone out and shot the film, and he puts the whole film together, and then he looks at me and he hires me, theoretically, and I look at the film, and he's trusting me to give a reaction as a bystander, as it were, somebody who's never been involved in the process, to look at the film and give my version of what I see. And very often directors will say, well, that's not what I had in mind at all. I shot it with this in mind, and I shot it this, and I shot it that, and I wanted this to happen. But when a bystander who's not been involved in the creation of making the movie looks at it, they have a whole different perspective. And it is not, as a film composer, you can't look at a film from the director's point of view. You have to look at it completely objectively, as though, because that's the only way I can react. So I give you that only as a brief, very brief run-up to what it's like in the film world, trying to compose for people who may or may not understand what music does, what film music does, and trying to make the whole thing work together. It's a very complicated process, and there's a lot of massaging that's involved, as you can imagine. And nowadays, with expenses being much higher, films being much, much more expensive than they used to be, the stakes are that much higher, and the nervousness factor on the part of employees is that much higher. Will it be right? Will it affect an audience a certain way? All of that. It's a very interesting sort of way to be creative against a medium that really doesn't belong to you at all, and you're just reactive to it.
Counting down our picks for the top 10 James Horner scores. He was a musical treasure of modern cinema. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 James Horner scores. For this list, we're focusing on the most brilliant scores of feature films composed by this composer and conductor. Number 10, Glory. Based on the Union Army's first African-American unit of the Civil War, this film was lent a heavy dose of emotion thanks to the poignant score of a young Los Angeles composer. Whether it was the battle marches of the soldiers or the personal dynamics between Colonel Robert Gould Shaw and his troops, Horner offered just the right amount of drama without overreaching. It's no easy task to compose music for a war film, especially one of this nature, and the foreign press acknowledged Horner's polished work with a Golden Globe nomination. Number 9, Cocoon. Not even 32 years old at the time of the release of this sci-fi fantasy flick, James Horner teamed up with an even younger cinematic prodigy by the name of Ron Howard to make Cocoon. Together, the two future legends brought a childlike wonder to elderly characters that found themselves reinvigorated by the extraterrestrial.
Morning, morning. Hi.
This magical score reminded us that life is what you make of it. And even if you're kicking back in retirement, there's always a new adventure awaiting. Cocoon also marked the first of many collaborations between Horner and Howard. Number 8. A Beautiful Mind. The mind truly is a beautiful thing, and James Horner channeled the cerebral kaleidoscope of John Nash to produce his Academy Award-nominated score. Horner symbolically connected the dots of a life in turmoil, thus establishing a powerful musical backdrop for the heartbreaking story of a legendary mathematician. Nearly 15 years after the release of A Beautiful Mind, both Nash and Horner would pass away within 5 weeks of each other. But their paths will always be connected through this poetic composition. Number 7. The Rocketeer. Though this superhero film is proof that Disney does occasionally stumble at the box office, it nonetheless managed to stand the test of time thanks to the playful soundtrack of James Horner. Partly truth and mostly fiction, The Rocketeer was set in 1938 Los Angeles, as an airborne man earns the attention of both Howard Hughes and the Nazis. Number 6. An American Tale. As the most successful non-Disney film of its time, this animated Steven Spielberg, Don Bluth flick introduced a promising new composer to an international audience. With a focus on young Fievel Mouskowitz and his arduous journey from Russia to the United States, James Horner joined forces with the London Symphony Orchestra for a score that ultimately triumphed above all. In fact, a song composed specifically for Linda Ronstadt, Somewhere Out There, later won the Grammy Award for Song of the Year. Number 5. Avatar. When James Cameron began working on his long-awaited sci-fi epic, it was only natural that he reached out to an old friend. In fact, James Horner proclaimed Avatar to be the most difficult project of his career, and he actually worked with an ethnomusicologist to establish a musical history for a fictional alien race. Former X Factor contestant Leona Lewis was tapped to perform the theme song, which later earned a Golden Globe nomination, while Avatar went on to earn a few $1 billion. Number 4. Aliens. Nearly 25 years before the cultural phenomenon that was Avatar, Cameron and Horner worked together on a chaotic collaboration for a classic sci-fi sequel. No one expected they'd ever work together again. Without an approved final cut just a mere 6 weeks before release, Horner was concerned about meeting his deadline.
This way! This way!
But like the true musical magician that he was, he locked himself down at Abbey Road Studios and finished the score in only 4 days. While Horner wasn't entirely satisfied with the hectic finish, he still managed to earn his first Academy Award nomination for his work. Number 3. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. As the first prominent theatrical work of his career, this film propelled a 28-year-old James Horner into the realm of big-budget Hollywood productions. Already known for his versatility and ability to think outside the box, Horner provided each main character with a subtle motif, thus providing depth to both Spock and Captain James T. Kirk, along with their superhuman nemesis. It's Shatner's scream that's most remembered. However, it was Horner's inventive musical bed that set the tone, complete with a 91-piece orchestra.
Live long and prosper.
Number 2. Braveheart, political freedom and musical ecstasy. These two forces met in Mel Gibson's acclaimed historical drama, as William Wallace fought for Scotland's independence.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Yet another score performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. Horner's creative chemistry with Gibson shines through the extravagant notes, and given the monumental nature of the film, the composer produced a heroic soundtrack for one of the decade's most respected films. Once again, a collection of nominations was bestowed upon Horner, although Braveheart was just another example of a man doing what he loved most. Before we unveil our number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions. Titanic.
I'm the king of the world!
Believe it or not, the iconic theme song for James Cameron's 1997 film was never supposed to be. After being instructed that vocals should not be included on the soundtrack, James Horner secretly wrote My Heart Will Go On with Will Jennings and approached his friend Celine Dion about lending her voice. Titanic further established James Horner's reputation as one of Hollywood's most brilliant composers, and his legacy will continue to reach beyond the realm of cinema. What's your favorite James Horner movie score? For more mind-blowing top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
I feel young.